Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Dave Nour. Dave is a senior leader and board advisor, educator, executive coach, and best-selling author. He is internationally recognized as the leading expert on applications of strategic relationships in profitable growth, sustained innovation, and lasting change. The author of 11 books, including the bestsellers Relationship Economics and Co-Create, as well as the forthcoming Curve Benders, which will be the subject of our conversation today. Nour serves as a trusted advisor to global clients and coaches corporate leaders. He is an adjunct professor at the Goizueta Business School at Emory University and was named to the Thinkers 50 Radar Class of 2021. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, Dave Nour.
Ed, it's good to be with you.
Well, first, Dave, why do you do what you do?
I got to tell you, I'm originally from Iran. It was driven into me at a very young age by my dad that regardless of what any of us do, we're fundamentally in the relationship business. I didn't get it then, but walking through the bazaars of Iran, dad didn't just have a list of what mom wanted or needed at the house. He also had a relationship list. And I grew up here in the States, and whether it's the States or any other really Western country, you know, the rest of the world builds relationships first from which they do business. Unfortunately, you come to the States and only if the business part goes well, we'll think about asking you about your family or nurturing that relationship, hence the disconnect between people that don't look like us, sound like us, or come from our backgrounds. So this has been literally a 2-decade flag-bearing crusade for me to teach leaders, teach organizations that if you lead with the relationship, the outcomes you're after will come. But if you lead with the transaction, that's all you'll ever have.
Well, tell me about your new book, Curve Benders.
Sure. So for your audience, I think it's important to highlight Relationship Economics was the first one where I talked about how to turn everyday contacts into meaningful, rich, value-based relationships. Most recently, Co-Create, focused on if you bring 2 or more parties together that demonstrate a vested interest in each other's success, you'll co-create something that neither one of you could do alone and really benefit from its long-tail success. In Curve Benders, I tackle this idea of future of work. So most of my books start with a question. I'm 53. I'm really curious of what the next 10 years of my life will look like. And not just my life, but work and play and the way we serve or give to others. So I embarked on a 4-year journey. We researched 15 forces that we believe will continue to disrupt our world. And by the way, this pandemic is one example of a black swan event. We know what pandemics are. We knew they were going to happen. We just didn't know the impact of them, if you will, or when. So to remain relevant, you're going to have to continue to learn and grow and reinvent yourself. And the best asset in that reinvention are few strategic relationships that I call curve benders. So the best way to think of them is 20 years from now, you'll look back and there's typically 1 or 2 people that had an indelible imprint on your growth, not just transactionally, but really they shaped the leader, they shaped the manager, they shaped the human being that we all become. I call those relationships curve benders.
And that's going to have more of an impact than the robots taking our jobs, right?
That's exactly right. I talk about in the book, they not only shape our direction, but they shape our ultimate destination. And you'll look back, and most people can think of that one boss that wasn't just about you making the numbers, or wasn't just about you getting that audit right, or wasn't just about the transactional tax season. They took you under his or her wings, and they taught you how to be a empathetic leader. They taught you how to be a compassionate leader. They taught you how to coach and mentor effectively. And years from now, you still remember them. You remember how they served and they gave more of themselves than they ever asked in return.
I just want to check on this because what came to my mind as you're talking about this and the notion of curve bender, and those of you watching there's the graphic behind David there. It almost sounds like the way that the trajectory of something changes as it's going past a planet, right? Like that's what as it swings by, the brings you into its gravitational pull and then launches you forward. Is that one of the analogies?
It's a great one, and in the book I wrote, and most of your audience can relate to this idea of a personal S-curve, right? So if you think of early on, you're investing in something, in learning how to do a job, or learning how to learn a new market, or get to know a new client. As you start to excel at it, then you kind of hit your stride, and now you're in that really sharp edge of the S, and at some point you're gonna plateau, right? You're gonna reach the top end of the S curve. And I got to tell you, there's only three options when you reach the arc of any job, right? Early on, like I said, you try to figure out where the coffee is. In 3 to 5 years, you've figured out how to do the job. And let's be honest, you get bored. You kind of are on autopilot. You know what to do. You know how to do it. If you flatline, somebody's going to have to jolt some excitement into your life to kind of get that mojo back, get that excitement back. Regrettably, a lot of people stay in that position too long for various reasons, and they start to decline. You see it in the quality of their work. You see it in the quality of how they show up. The best opportunity is to reach what I call a refraction point in the book. And if I'm going to take you back to one of your first physics classes, if you ever shine a light through that glass of water or through that prism, you saw it bend and you saw the rainbow show up. Similarly, these relationships come into our lives that not only accelerate our learning, our growth, they really reinvigorate us. They light a fire within us. I've never believed lighting a fire under anybody lasts. It's lighting a fire within someone where that passion fuels what they do and how they do it. And it really takes on a new reinvention. So they start on that next S curve. And that's how they learn. That's how they grow. That's candidly how any of us remain relevant, particularly if you think of this continued disruption that we believe, and our research shows it's going to continue to come at all of us.
So let me just make sure I have this right. So it's really what you're saying is it's up to all of us to really be mindful of these people as they move into our lives, to recognize, hey, this might be someone who's going to be a curve bender for me.
It's exactly right. As a matter of fact, in a bizarre fashion, our research shows that early on, we fight them, right? That person can't be right. Susan can't have all the answers. And then we have this aha moment. Oh my God, I got to go back and listen to John, or I got to go back and listen to Susan, because here's the interesting perspective for your listeners. The common thread between over 100 executives I interviewed, and I asked them, what did the curve benders in your life have in common? The common thread from all those interviews was they saw the best version of me, even when I couldn't see it myself. So relationships that come into our lives that don't have a transactional agenda, they demonstrate the best interest, a vested interest in us individuals, and they see something in us. They see this latent capability or competency or something in us that, for whatever reason, maybe it's the imposter syndrome, right? We don't see ourselves, but they nurture that, and they push us, out of our comfort zone, and they push us to learn and grow and inquire and explore and experiment, and in essence go in a direction that we may not. But looking back, it was exactly the relationships we needed at the right times in our lives or our careers. That is, you're exactly right. It sets us on a new trajectory of personal reinvention, of growth, of relevance.
And David, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
I got to tell you, I'm a product. I'm a first generation immigrant. I came to this country with $100, a suitcase, didn't know anybody, didn't speak a word of English. Ed, I got to tell you, it's my dad. And I distinctly remember he's now well in his 80s, working multiple jobs we grew up in a middle-class family, but not only he taught me the incredible value of work ethic and standing up on your own 2 feet and stop behaving as a victim, lifelong value of education, give, save, then spend, which I'm trying to teach my kids. Little difficult with YouTube subscription and Netflix, but that's another story for another episode. But Dad taught me a lot of who I am today. And it's one of those things that, like most of us, we will really value when we have kids of our own, and hopefully in a small way, try to pass that on to the next generation.
And lastly, David, how can somebody contact you?
Very kind of you to ask. So our website is probably best, Nour Group, Nour Group.com. There's a vibrant forum and a blog and podcast and all kinds of other good stuff that they can learn and grow through.
All right. David Nour, the author of Curve Benders, thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.